They built 96 houses on my land, not by accident, not by mistake, but on purpose, and the first time I saw it, my stomach dropped into my shoes as if the Colorado mountains themselves were mocking me. I inherited 47 acres from my grandfather, pristine, paid off, a forest that had smelled of pine and wet soil, that had echoed with birdsong and the wind through the trees, and I hadn't visited in 3 years, busy with divorce, work, and kids in college, trusting that the online tax receipts I kept would keep my claim intact, only to turn off Highway 36 onto the old Fire Road in August 2022 and find Mediterranean-style houses instead. Lined up in perfect beige rows, fake balconies glinting in the sun, pools being installed, mailboxes awaiting families who had paid $485,000 each, the carved stone Ridgeline Heights sign staring me down, a neighborhood where my forest had been, and the guard at the gate laughed when I showed him my phone with the deed photo, smirking like I was a delusional tourist, until Cassandra Whitmore appeared, Botoxed into perpetual mild surprise, white linen glinting like the sun. Mid-50s, and with a smile that said she had never been denied anything of importance, her eyes scanning me as she calculated I was beneath her notice, calling me sweetie and implying I was here for construction work. And when I insisted I was the legal owner, showing my grandfather's 1971 deed, she casually explained that a forensic title search declared the land abandoned, adverse possession legally theirs, $16 million already deposited in pre-sales. Families moving in by Thanksgiving, and I could do nothing but breathe and drive home, hands shaking, heart racing, knowing this wasn't just theft. It was premeditated, calculated, and wrapped in the false security of legalese. Yet all along, every email, tax receipt, and survey map my grandfather meticulously kept since 1971, the leather ledgers smelling of pipe tobacco and WD-40, were proof that the land was mine. And when I finally found Lydia Chen, a civil lawyer known for obliterating adverse possession claims, she didn't just read the evidence. She strategized with a surgical mind, telling me to let the houses be completed, to let Cassandra and Preston Whitmore overreach, to gather evidence from every harassment, threat, and fraudulent document, because the moment they tried to move too fast or manipulate perception, they would entangle themselves in a web of criminal fraud, not just civil trespass, and I listened. Trembling but obedient, watching the construction unfold like a slow-motion crime scene, the air thick with diesel, sawdust, and the echoing pop of nail guns, photographing every frame, noting every date, every interaction, while Cassandra escalated, filing false complaints, bribing code enforcement, attempting social media defamation, hiring private investigators to intimidate my son Tyler at his restaurant job, and even fabricating IRS complaints. Each attack revealing the desperation of someone cornered, yet unknowingly creating a mountain of evidence that Lydia and I meticulously collected, timestamps, GPS coordinates, copies of every online receipt, permit, and internal corporate email, until the Ridgeline Heights development itself became a trap, a self-documented confession of fraud by those who thought they could cheat an engineer who knew how to read a survey map, a ledger, a title deed. When families began moving in, I felt sick, knowing these weren't villains but people chasing the American dream, yet caught in a scheme where greed, not necessity, dictated the law. And even when Cassandra tried to smear me online, creating Facebook posts that branded me a predator, the comments and shares became evidence, proof of malice, the community witnessing her panic while I stayed silent, documenting, logging, building the case, while Lydia expanded the strategy. Mapping every Whitmore project, uncovering patterns of predatory development across Colorado, Delaware LLCs, secret loans, and backdoor agreements, showing that this wasn't a simple property dispute, but a family business built on theft, misrepresentation, and intimidation. And as we prepared for court, we included the families as potential witnesses and allies, because in truth, they were victims, and I would fight not to take their homes. But to ensure the people committing fraud couldn't profit from it, knowing the legal battle would be brutal, public, and exhausting, yet necessary, while Cassandra and Preston, the husband and wife architects of this greed, began to falter, sweating under deposition questions, contradicting themselves, each internal email we produced a smoking gun, revealing that they knew the land was not abandoned, that my ownership was continuous, tax payments unbroken, and that their claim was a calculated lie. And when court day arrived, the Colorado Rockies shining indifferently behind glass walls, the families from Ridgeline Heights in the gallery, I stood with Lydia beside me as she presented the evidence, showing the Judge Preston's email laying out their plan to exploit a loophole, rush sales, and pressure any owner into cheap settlements, knowing most would lack records. And as she methodically exposed every lie, every bribe, every falsified permit, the tension was tangible, the Whitmores' confidence cracking like concrete in the sun, while the families realized the truth of what had been done to them. And I, Dakota Flint, saw the culmination of months of patience, documentation, and strategic restraint paying off. Every threat, social media smear, pie visit, and false complaint a piece of a puzzle that would prove criminal intent, leading to a temporary restraining order halting all transfers and sales, ensuring no further damage could be done, and the judge's words clear. One more post, one more anonymous complaint, and contempt of court would follow, Cassandra's face pale, the arrogance gone, replaced by disbelief that their meticulous plan had failed, and that the small, meticulous, tax-paying grandson of a Depression-era man with pipe tobacco ledgers had turned their own fraud against them. While off the record, Lydia explained how each email, each bribe, and each corporate maneuver would be traced. How we could link Ridgeline Capital and Whitmore Development to multiple projects, multiple victims, patterns of RICO-style fraud, and how once the evidence was presented, settlements would be forced, personal assets exposed, and justice, slow but inevitable, would prevail. Meanwhile, I balanced life's other pressures, my daughter's tears, my son's frightened questions, my own job in jeopardy from misperceptions, learning that patience, documentation, and ethical strategy could turn chaos into leverage. And as snow fell over Fort Collins and Ridgeline Heights, families decorating, living their lives, unaware they were part of a legal chessboard, I realized the Whitmores' mistakes, underestimating the value of meticulous record-keeping, underestimating an engineer's analytical mind, underestimating the patience of someone who inherited both land and principle, had built my case for me. And when media exposure brought investigative reporters like Patricia Hughes into the story, broadcasting the fraud to thousands, the Whitmores' attempts at intimidation became evidence of consciousness of guilt. Their desperate maneuvers to manipulate perception, hire pies, and smear me on Facebook only tightening the noose around their corporate and personal assets, while I, silent and documenting, became a guardian not just of land, but of principle, watching as the law, evidence, and patience intersected to ensure that justice, measured and deliberate, would prevail, that the 96 families would keep their homes free from fraud, that Cassandra and Preston Whitmore would be held accountable, financially and reputationally. And as the trial loomed, every piece of evidence in place, every witness prepared, every strategy aligned, I felt a rare sense of calm, knowing that the chaos they had created, the fear, the harassment, the smear campaigns would all fold under the weight of truth, and that in the end the forest my grandfather had nurtured might have been cut down, but the legacy he left, meticulous, patient, unyielding, was alive, embodied in me, in every receipt, every photograph, every document, every careful log of visits, each one a testament to the principle that greed and deception can be documented, confronted, and defeated, leaving the Whitmores with nothing but legal bills and the shame of exposure, while the families could finally live in their homes. And I, sitting on my back porch one snowy night, whiskey in hand, watching the quiet glow of Ridgeline Heights, realized that sometimes justice isn't a shout, but a slow, deliberate accumulation of evidence, patience, strategy, and that even the boldest fraudsters are only as untouchable as the documents and integrity they underestimate, and that a quiet man with a truck, an engineer's mind, and a grandfather's meticulous records could, against the arrogance and wealth of others, turn the entire tide, proving that in the end, law, evidence, and patience are weapons more powerful than fear, and that human greed, no matter how elaborate, leaves traces, footprints, and paper trails, and if you know how to read them, you can watch an empire of sand crumble, leaving justice not just served, but undeniable, leaving those who thought themselves untouchable exposed, and families relieved, and me, Dakota Flint, sitting on that porch, feeling the wind, the snow, the legacy of William Flint, understanding finally deeply that protecting what's yours sometimes requires waiting, observing, documenting, and striking not in anger, but in precision, knowing that when all the pieces align. Even the boldest thieves cannot escape the consequences of their own actions, and that the world has a way of balancing itself when patience and principle guide every step, leaving the story not just of land reclaimed, but of cunning, perseverance, and quiet justice that hums louder than any shout, echoing in the mountains that once again feel like home.